Welcome, welcome. This is Gull, your money mindset expert. And today I have the pleasure and the honor of speaking to Scott Perry. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Gull, it's great to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Scott. Scott, everyone's heard your intro. They know how fabulous you are, but please, in your own words, tell everybody what it is that you do.
Sure. So I am an Encore life coach at Creative on Purpose, where we help people that are in the third act of their lives find fulfillment, forge meaning, and make a difference in their second half of life through some sort of entrepreneur endeavor that leverages their wisdom and experience and doing work with and for people they care about.
Awesome. Fantastic. And this is how we actually met and we got to know. Um, I was really fascinated by that element. And I love it how you phrase it as well, third act. So tell us, how did it all start for you? How did you end up being on the online space? Well, you talk us through your life journey.
Sure. Well, my background is actually my working life began as a teacher, and I taught at some reasonably famous schools that some people might recognize the names of, and then found that that work was not as fulfilling as I thought it was going to be when I first entered. So I moved into a couple of other things, but in my late 20s, I decided I really wanted to go for it with a music career. I'd been a guitarist for years. I had always dreamed of making that my full-time vocation. And so I made a deal with my wife right after my first son was born. You know, what better time to try try to make a living as a musician.
Perfect timing, I have to
I
say.
always joke, hey guys, I finally found something that pays less than teaching. So I just made a deal with my wife. We had some money put away, and I said, all I'm asking for is a year. And if at the end of a year I'm making enough every night to be able to afford to do it the next night, I'd like to be able to just keep doing it. And it turned out that I was making enough every night to do it again the next night for almost 30 years. Along the way, we had a second child, and I decided to dial back on my performing schedule. I opened up a guitar studio, found out that I loved teaching people how to play the guitar even more than performing. And then as I was entering my life's third act, somewhere around age 45, I had this calling again to try something else. I didn't know what it was, but I ended up going into Seth Godin's Alt MBA program. And I entered thinking I was going to turn my online or my guitar school, my brick and mortar practice into an online endeavor. And I exited that program, not even wanting to be a musician or a teacher anymore, but not really sure what I wanted to do. So I ended up just doing a lot of blogging and broadcasting. Along the way, I got hired by Seth Godin and his team to be a head coach in his programs. And it took about 5 years to fully transition. But, along the way, I discovered my passion for helping people do what I had done, which is to enter a whole new way of being or way of becoming by transitioning from music into coaching. And and so I've been doing this full time now for the last couple of years.
Interesting. Now I want to unpack quite a lot of what you've said here, and you've just sort of skimmed over the really juicy parts. And one of them being, how did you convince your wife, by the way, to to that the new honey, I'm going to be a musician now kind of lifestyle. When we just had the baby, by the way, so it doesn't matter how things are, or the diapers are up and everything else, but let me go and spend the nights making money, being a musician. I'm saying this a bit of tongue in cheek. Of course, the most important thing is to convince yourself. Where did you have the courage to make that kind of decision? It's not an easy decision to make.
Yeah, I- I'll confess, Gull, that I'm a complete weirdo because I am the firstborn son born in August, a Leo, in the year of the dragon, 1964, to a very stubborn Polish man and a very determined Irish woman. And
Mm.
so I do not have the same level of anxiety and fear for the uncertainty and unknown. I actually get a lot of energy from seeking the edges of my understanding and ability and exploring those. And I know that some people listening might think, oh, that sounds great. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome these days and that sort of thing. And I certainly have my own version of that. But by and large, if I think that there's something interesting on the other side of the curtain, I'm going to open the curtain and step through to find out what it's all about. And
Mm,
my wife and I have made several transitions in our lives where we just said, you know what, we're going to leap and hope that the net appears. So my wife was reasonably on board from the very beginning, just because she knew that if I didn't give this a try, that I would regret it at some point in my life, and she knew that I would be good to my word, and that if I couldn't make it happen in a reasonable amount of time, that I would go back to teaching or doing whatever I had to do to, take care of business. You know, my wife and I had this saying, we're Perrys, and Perrys figure it out. And so we always just assume that we will be able to figure it out. And I think, if I'm honest, for anybody that can afford the technology to listen to a broadcast like this,
mm,
you have the resources to take small steps into possibility and developing your potential. We're just and if you're unable to do that, it's really not your fault, because society, institutionalized education, institutionalized occupation, really does not encourage us to explore our potential and deliver on our promises, creative uh, beings.
mm. And that's interesting too. That's an interesting part, actually, because I think you're right. I think the society has us believe we need to pigeonhole ourselves and stay in those pigeonholes, because anything outside is really, really scary and awful. And there's always fear mongering going on. And there's always is. With the current climate, when this podcast is being recorded, we're in the height of inflation globally. Everywhere, everyone's talking about inflation and prices going up, and we've got strikes here with the London transport because the pay's frozen, but we hit 10, I think, literally hitting 10% inflation or something ridiculous. So what's the security? But the idea that you should be pigeonholed and that's your security, that's a falsity. But that's when you step outside of your life and take a bird's eye view of your life, then you should realize, actually, I'm being pigeonholed, whereas I have the whole world at my disposal. But I think that still takes courage to be able to step outside and take a breather and get off the hamster wheel, because a lot of times we are on the hamster wheel, especially when you have families.
Mhm.
Once you have kids, it's you are on the hamster wheel. And I look back at my life, and I've made some drastic decisions. Bloody hell, I've done that. But I was almost like, I had nothing else to lose, because I was starting off in a different way. So when I gave up my legal career initially to have to stay home family, it's because I was coming out of an abusive marriage. And in that marriage, I was a breadwinner. I thought, that scenario didn't work. Let me go the other way. That didn't work either. But so when I went down my entrepreneurial route, it was because the motivation was, I want to be home for my kids. That's it. That's the only thing I thought about. Now, if I look back at my life, because I am a lawyer, and being a teacher, we're both from professional backgrounds. If I had a thriving corporate career, would I have the courage to leave it when I've had a child or when I've had young children and go on to do something that I'm passionate about? I would have to say, as much as I would love to say, oh, I've got the courage. No, yes, I would. I'm going to have to say no. The reason why I chose this path, because when it came to the crossroads in my life, I had to either go back to the legal world and start from scratch there, or start scratch somewhere else. So I thought, you know what, they're equally awful. This path at least allows me to work around my kids. That's why I chose it. Does it make sense? I'm just being very open and honest about me, and I think that's why Divine Sanity knew that would be the case and sort of directed me this way. But you had that courage, and I think you're very blasé, like, oh, it's just me. But I think you need to congratulate yourself to the fact that you had the courage to take an honest step like that, and it's paid off. It's worked very well for you in your life. But it was a major step. And then once again, changing from that, from being a musician and quite successful, if you made a living out of it for the last 30 years, that's quite an achievement in itself, to step away from that and go into teaching, and then giving up both and going into completely different fields. Now, talk me through that. How did you, well, first of all, how did you know I don't want to be teaching guitar anymore? And secondly, how did you walk away from it? Again, that stable income, or some kind of stable income, because that's what you know. So talk us through, how did you work on your mindset, or what did you think about? How did you, convince yourself to walk away from that as well? Considering that you've done that for 30 years?
Yeah. Well, I think that there are two things. There's something that motivated me from a very young age, and there was something I learned at a very young age that really helped. The thing that motivated me was I was introduced to the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius in the seventh grade by my Latin teacher. That is a journal of the last of what are called the good Roman emperors of the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius. And it's also one of the primary texts referred to by followers of Stoic philosophy. And so Stoicism is very misunderstood in this day and age. A lot of people have heard of it because people in the Silicon Valley and people like Ryan Holiday and Tim Ferriss have popularized it. But Stoic philosophy is essentially a philosophy of life that promises that if you pay attention to the content of your character, and if you engage in the world with intention and integrity and serve others, that you can experience joy and equanimity regardless of what happens to you in life. And one of my favorite Marcus Aurelius quotes is, I won't give it to you in Latin, or Greek, but it's, think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what is left and live it properly. And so this is a practice in what the Romans called memento mori. And it literally means remember you die. And it may sound strange for a seventh grader to have this idea resonate, but it really did. And it's something, and the amazing thing to me about, being given a copy of Meditations by my Latin teacher in seventh grade is I essentially stole the book. I never really gave it back. And at the end, when I graduated, he just said, keep the book. And that I wore that thing out. I read it so often. And it literally became a manual for me to, in everything, in the way I approached every element of my life: relationships, work, friendships, personal development. So that's something that I've had from a very early age, is this idea that, whatever meaning my life has is based on what I do with it, as I am on this journey from womb to tomb, which is the journey we're all on.
Absolutely.
The other part of it is, I want to just clarify that I didn't burn any bridges. So when I transitioned from teaching to becoming a musician, I was building a music career alongside of my teaching career.
Okay.
When it was clear that I had a legitimate chance of going all in on music, I then had that discussion with my wife and went all in with music with a plan. And that's the thing, is I think dreams are really important, but a dream without a plan is just a wish. And, the universe is not conspiring to just grant your wishes. You have to be thoughtful and deliberate and plan, and you have to engage it with intention and integrity. You have to do the work. And I'm not, I'm not dissing the idea of The Secret or manifesting or all that. I think it's a both and. You have to have the dream, you have to have a pursuit, and you also have to do the work, and you have to be thoughtful and deliberate about the way you do that. So when I transitioned from music to coaching, I, number one, picked up a really sweet gig as a head coach in Akimbo workshops. So I immediately had, some income, and I built my own practice alongside of maintaining a studio and teaching guitar lessons. coaching in the Akimbo workshops, building my practice. When I was able to, when I had a practice of my own that was big enough, I closed down the studio. And when I had a practice that was big enough to do without being a head coach in Akimbo workshops, I ended my association with very amicably. And I'm very grateful to Seth and the Alt MBA and Akimbo for all the opportunity and the learning that happened there. But it's not as cavalier as it may have sounded when I first articulated it. There was a lot of intention. There was a lot of planning. There was, plenty of failure, but never expecting that anybody was going to hand anything to me, knowing that I had to work for it and knowing that it might not work out and that would be okay too. Because I think that the reward of your life, the real reward in your life is based on the quality of your effort, not in the results. The results are actually not yours. You may or may not receive them, but there's so much beyond your control that the only thing within your control is, as you were referring to, the thoughts in your head, the thought and your interpretation of what's going on, and what you decide and do next. That's all that's yours. And if you do that, again, with intention and integrity, what in my experience, prosperity and profitability can follow, and often do.
I think that's a great way to look upon it. You need to have a plan. I mean, I think, and I agree with you. I do teach law of attraction, but in the right way to, well, law of attraction, I want to be very clear about it. It's happening all the time. It's just getting the law of attraction to work in your favor and for it to bring the things you desire. That is what people need to work on. And a lot of the times, I think when the movie The Secret came out, it gave people a lot of false notions. You can sit in a room, chant affirmations and things will fall into lap. That doesn't really happen. And then when people woke up to that, they realize, oh, well, this is all false notion and this is all BS, etc., etc. When the truth of the matter is, it's the laws are there. You just have to use them in your favor. And you've done that correctly by having a plan, by setting the intention and being focused on it. You've done literally exactly that's required. And then being detached from the outcome, because you're not setting yourself up for fail. You realize, okay, if that doesn't work out, I'll come back, but I'm going to give it my all. And that's why things have worked in the way they have. And this is what I want to stress to people listening. When you hear these amazing stories and people have transitioned from one career, you've had multiple careers now, it's not that they have some potluck or they are extraordinary or that they are just super smart. They just have a plan and they're focused and they are, most importantly, not married to the outcome. You just said perfectly, it may work out, it may not, but you need to be okay with both. And this is why I think this is the key to your success. And because I know you're very determined to help other people. And this is why I know you for a fact that you will succeed, because you've walked a clear path, and that's what you're giving to others to walk down the same clear path, which I think is so important. I think this is something else which struck me about you was, I think you're giving hope to people who are, especially in their 60s and thinking, okay, what can I do now? And my life is over. I'm speaking, by the way, from the South Asian concept, because for them, I'm 44 and I'm old. I'm gone. I'm like, I should be thinking about praying and going to my grave. Literally, that's my culture's idea. Anything over 40, you're counting your days till you die. And so the idea that you can have a new career in so-called when people are retiring or during your retirement years, when you're planning for retirement, is a novelty. And I think that's ridiculous, because you're never too late and never too old or never too young for anything, as long as your heart desires. So what pushes you along? Well, when you come across people, say, for example, someone in their 70s, and they say, like, Scott, dude, you're only like 50 something, I'm 70 something, what can I do? And I've got health issues and I don't have that mental capacity now, and I just want to chill and relax. What would you say to someone like that? That's a reason why I say that, because that's a mindset issue. That's not a capability issue, that's a mindset issue. How would you approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we say very frequently at Creative on Purpose, and in the work I do as an Encore life coach, is Choose your story, choose your future. If you
Mm.
are telling yourself a story that your life is essentially over at age 70, then you are telling yourself a story that you will make true.
Yeah.
If you tell yourself a story that right now, in this moment, I can I can start to take control of my thoughts and perceptions and frame more accurately my possibilities and make decisions about what I decide and do next. You can change your story. So, you mentioned mindset a couple of times. Mindset's really important, but we think that if we get our mindset right, then we'll start doing the right things. And I would assert that mindset doesn't inform posture. Posture informs mindset.
Hmm.
And just by way of example, when you were an infant and you were witnessing all these people doing this moving your lips and sounds coming out thing, and you realized, and you saw people interacting and engaging and smiling and laughing and whatever it was, you decided that that looked cool. Now,
Mm.
nobody gave you a mindset. Nobody's, sent you Zig Ziglar or Tony Robbins tapes and said, listen to these and you'll get your mindset right so you can talk. They didn't provide you with any instruction whatsoever. You decided that you wanted to do this talking thing and you started babbling and goo-gooing and gagaing and every once in a while hit upon a word and people got excited and then you put a couple words together and then you made a sentence and then you made a phrase and a paragraph and pretty soon you're telling stories and asking for a cookie and milk. You did it poorly until you did it well.
Mm.
You approached your posture informed your mindset, and I think it's always that way. Of course it becomes cyclical. Your posture can inform a better mindset, and your better mindset will inform a better posture,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. But it begins with doing something. And the best way, this speaks to something that you were asking me about earlier, it's not about the big, bold leaps. It's not about swinging for the fences every time you're up at bat. I think it's more about the strategic approach and the tactical, small daily steps taken with intention and integrity, focused, bold, and disciplined. One small step, becoming half a shade braver every day by taking a small step into possibility and into the development of your potential and the delivery of your promise. And I teach clients, we're gonna create a 1 minute habit. Um, this approach came from when I was 45 years old. I was literally 75 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I decided to do something about it. And it began with putting my shoes on, my running shoes on, and walking to the top of the driveway and back. And, you know, I knew I had a minute every day that I could do that. And, then it was, why not go to the mailbox and back? Then why not go around the block once? And eventually, not only did I lose 75 pounds, but I started deciding that I'd jog part of it. Then I was jogging the whole thing. Then I was entering 5Ks and sometimes winning in my age group. I didn't take a bold leap of signing up for a 5K. I took the small intentional step of putting on my walking shoes and walking for a minute. And I could build from there. And that's the way that all new habits are formed. But you have to develop a 1 minute routine and commit to doing it daily. And in time, and I don't agree with all the, there's all sorts of numbers, like you have to do it for this many days or whatever. I think we're all born with different temperaments and tolerances. Some of us can adopt a new habit quicker than others. Some it takes more time. But if you begin with a 1 minute exercise, all of us have a minute to change, and that 1 minute a day can change your life.
I love that. I love that. And on that note, we're going to wrap up. So Scott, tell us, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you on the internet?
So if you go to creativeonpurpose.com, you'll find the blog and access to the broadcast. You'll be able to access the about page and learn what we're all about. We do, if the idea of the art of Encore Living is interesting to you, if you would like to leverage the wisdom and experience you've earned, making a living and raising a family, and define the difference only you can make and build something around that you can continue to contribute to the world. We have a quick start guide that's absolutely free, you can grab. And if you want to hop on a 30-minute call with me to come up with a strategy for how you can dial in the difference only you can make and decide on a platform, product, or service to start delivering it, I would love to have that conversation with you.
Wonderful. If you're listening to this episode on the podcast, the links Scott has just mentioned will be in the show notes. And if you're watching on the YouTube, then down below in the description section, we'll have the links to that particular, to all his other links as well. Go check him out. He's awesome. And we had such a fantastic time talking to you today, Scott. We have to have you back on Money Talkies. But thank you so much for being so honest and so open about your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Gull.
And thank you for listening to me and Scott today on Friday Feature. I will be back on another Friday Feature with another amazing guest, speaking to them, finding out how they changed their life by changing their mindset. Until the next time we meet, this is Gull signing off. Take care and bye for now.